Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
We love Indian politics because Indian politics is so exciting, we keep telling you. But you know what? These days, a lot is happening elsewhere that is overshadowing even Indian politics. And that's the reason we haven't been given an opportunity by the news cycle to talk about Indian politics, domestic politics for some time on CTC. The issue that is overshadowing domestic politics is what else but geopolitics. Now, geopolitics also, so far we were looking eastwards. Eastwards means we're looking at China, Japan, Australia, Indo-Pacific, Indian Ocean, Taiwan, etc. But now geopolitics is also stirred up on our western frontiers. Again, on the western frontiers, so far we were only looking at our problem zones, our zones of challenge, that is Pakistan and Afghanistan. The new stirring is in a zone of opportunity, and it's a new zone of opportunity. That is what usually would be called West Asia, Middle East. I think the MEA, I don't know if they still have the division or not. They used to have a MENA division, Middle East, North Africa, right? So it is those countries. So new opportunities have risen there. Now some people are saying, oh, now there is a Middle Eastern Quad that has come up. That is India, America, Israel and UAE, because our respective foreign ministers had a meeting. They had a virtual meeting. Indian and the Israeli foreign ministers were present physically, and the UAE and the US foreign ministers were there virtually. So they had that meeting. It was a quadrilateral meeting. So you can call it quadrilateral, you can call it chokri, you can call it minilateral. But this was a foursome. Foursome is very much like the other four, that is Australia, Japan, India, America. Now, immediately, a lot of people said, oh, there is a new Quad coming up. So India is now a member of a Quad in the East, that is focused on China, and India then is a member of a Quad in the West. Now that's focused on who we'll discuss in a minute. Now it's too early to call this a Quad because Quad has taken quite some time coming into being. It has held many military exercises, it has done many other things, and it has a very clear objective, and that clear objective is to balance China in the Indo-Pacific region, because China is expansionist now, it is growing, so other countries need to come together. So that Quad has evolved over time after many hesitations on the part of many countries, particularly India. Even now, India is hesitant to let that Quad evolve into a more military or more defense-oriented alliance. Because India likes strategic autonomy, and India also has complications. India shares a very long border with China. India is not far away from China as, say, Australia might be. So India has compulsions. India's choices are also different. They are limited, but they are also different. So India explores all choices. What's happened in the Middle East, too early to call it a Quad. So some people, diplomats like the militaries like acronyms, diplomats like new names. So they invent new names. So this is a mini-lateral, right? A bilateral, that is two countries talking, multilateral, WTO, the UN, 100 plus countries talking, 20 countries talking, G20, multilateral. This is 4 countries, so minilateral. Now, minilateral can just be a generic name. In the course of time, this will acquire a name. Because, where is this rooted? This is rooted in something that the world is now observing the first anniversary of. And this, to my mind, was Donald Trump's biggest foreign policy achievement. That is the so-called Abraham Accords in September of 2020, which were also sort of midwifed by his son-in-law Jared Kushner. So he did make a constructive contribution to the state of the world by bringing Israel closer to key Arab countries, that is Bahrain and UAE to begin with, and then Sudan, Morocco, etc. joined in. And we know that with Saudi Arabia, this has not been made de jure, in the sense that Saudi Arabia is not a member of the Abraham Accords, but for all practical purposes, it's there. So those Abraham Accords made the Arab countries, the richer Arab countries, the richer and the more moderate Islamic Arab countries, to recognize Israel, to make peace with Israel. And as that happened, it opened many options for India as well. Because what is India's problem? India's problem is all this while we've been complaining to the Americans that, de-hyphenate our relationship with you vis-a-vis Pakistan. So your policy should not be an India-Pakistan policy. De-hyphenate, de-hyphenate, de-hyphenate. We can say it any number of times. Now we celebrate the fact that there is dehyphenation in that American policy, so much so that when Wendy Sherman, the American Deputy Secretary of State, comes to India, and from India she goes to Pakistan, nobody complains that you are bringing back the two-country rule and you're bringing back the hyphenation. Because now nobody cares. You know that in substance that hyphenation is over. But in the Middle East, we had a hyphenation problem. And hyphenation problem was that you were either pro-Israeli or pro-Arab. If you were pro-Palestinian, you had to be anti-Israeli. If you were pro-Palestinian, you were pro-Arab. If you are pro-Arab, then which Arab? There was a socialist era of the Cold War, when the Arabs you were with were, say, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, because those were more of the left bloc or Soviet bloc friendly countries. They also had a lot of the Soviet bloc weaponry. But now that has changed. So India was left sort of hanging in terms of its own interest. Because if India got too close to, say, UAE, Saudi Arabia, as India needed to, then how would India balance its relationship with Israel? So that hyphenation was there. India-Israel or India-Arab. These were two different baskets. Now, for a long time, this was quite simple because India did not speak with Israel. There was some degree of hypocrisy because India did speak with Israel on the side, but only secretively, not in public. Narasimha Rao took that bold step and he upgraded India's relations with Israel to full diplomatic level. Until then, India had recognized Israel. India was among the first countries to recognize Israel, but India did not have full diplomatic relations. It was partly a function of the Cold War because we were closer to the Soviet bloc, India was closer to the Soviet bloc, so we followed the cue from the Soviet bloc. And if they considered Israel an illegitimate state, so did India. And India's voting record on Israel showed that at the UN. But once Narasimha Rao upgraded the relationship, through these years, mind you, India did not have a diplomatic presence in Israel, but Israel had a consulate in Mumbai. Israel had a consulate in Mumbai, essentially one for some trade, and also because there were lots of Jewish people in India, people of Jewish origin. So many of them were migrating to Israel, and many Indians needed to travel. So in fact, even when I traveled to Israel the first time, during the first Gulf War, I went to that Israeli consulate in Mumbai to get my visa. And those days, you got the Israeli visa on a piece of paper, on a separate piece of paper, which was not stamped on your passport, because then if you had the Israeli visa on your passport, then all the same Arab countries, Muslim countries that you go to often, like UAE, for example, Dubai, they would not admit you because you had the visa from what they considered an illegitimate state on your passport. So Narasimha Rao changed some of that by upgrading his relationship with Israel, and he ran into quite a bit of opposition from the old establishment in the MEA and within his own party, who said, "What the hell are you doing?" But he had the vision, so he did that. So he opened that door. One door, so you can see it like two doors in your way. So one door he kicked open when he upgraded India's relations with Israel. 1992, I think. Serendipity, reporter's luck, you can call it what you want. I was actually in Israel doing a story on how the entire Middle East was 1 year after the Gulf War, because we had covered the Gulf War. So we were there, and I was staying overnight along with my photographer colleague Prashant Panjia. We were staying overnight at one of those kibbutz motels on the border with Lebanon. And the rooms to stay were sort of underground. They were like shelters because that was the rocket zone. That's where Katyushas and others used to fly in. So we were sleeping there, and early morning the phone rang. The phone rang and I picked it up, and they said, "We are calling from the Israeli army radio. Government of India has just announced that they are upgrading their relations with Israel to full diplomatic level. So can you please speak on it for a minute? We have a show called Boker Tov Israel, which means good morning Israel. So just see what you say. Do you think it's a good idea? I said it's a wonderful idea. So if you just say that it's a wonderful idea, India has done this, Boker Tov Israel. So this will go out. So I got the opportunity to do that. That's my little contribution to that historic morning. And because we also do some storytelling, I will also tell you that we had a young Israeli officer accompanying us, a very young officer, maybe a trainee, accompanying us like a guide to help us around. He was staying with us. He is the one you see on this picture. See this picture on my screen. He's the one standing with S. Jaishankar, our foreign minister, receiving him in Israel. Why? Because he is now the chief of protocol in the Israeli foreign ministry. So Gil Haskell, wonderful to see you doing so well in life. And obviously these 30 years sit much more likely on his shoulders than mine. So just as I told you, when you want to walk into a new place, one door is kicked open by Narasimha Rao, the other door is still shut. And that door is shut because how do you now balance your relationship with the Arab world and with Israel and the Western world? There is a contradiction because the Arab world still calls Israel an illegitimate state. In fact, in most of the Muslim countries as I traveled, including in Pakistan for a long time, on the maps of the world, Israel was not identified as Israel. It said illegitimate Zionist entity. Right? Or something like that, something even more offensive than that sometimes. So how do you balance? That was a problem for India. That second door was then kicked open by Abraham Accords. So thank Trump for that, because Trump got these Arab countries, key Arab countries, to recognize and accept Israel. Some other countries had done that earlier. Egypt had done it. Turkey had done it. Not Arab, but Muslim country. Egypt had done it after the Camp David peace accords, and the Jordanians did it in 1994. Also, although behind the scenes, it was all hunky-dory between the Jordanians and the Israelis all the time anyway, most of the time anyway, after 1967. So, this now opened up the region for India. India could now extend the same kind of outreach to Israel as it did to the more moderate Arab Islamic countries, that is UAE, Saudi Arabia. I know you might balk when I call it a more moderate Islamic country, but you know what the comparison is now, because the gold standard now is the Taliban. So now that one important hyphen has also gone out. So India's Middle East policy has now got dehyphenated. In fact, I make a mistake every time when I say Middle East like this. I should say Middle East like this, because if this is not, so apologies. So look at the map of the world, or look at a globe if you can find it, or just Google it. See the Middle East. So a lot of the other definitions in the Middle East are now changing, because on our mind, there was a famous book in the 50s called Scars on Our Minds. That was about the scars that the Soviets and the Americans have about each other, because they have preconceived notions. So similar scars on our minds are geopolitical, because geopolitically, we have set notions of which region is what. So we know what is Middle East, we know what is the Arab world, we know what is Southeast Asia, we know what is North Africa, or what is the Mediterranean region. It's all now merging in, because the world is now contracting. The world is now contracting, and many more countries have global interests going beyond regions, cutting across regions, than say the two superpowers or three superpowers or one superpower. This is a very different world. So if you look at the world around what used to be the Middle East, so what used to be North Africa is now very much a part of the Middle East. Not just that, look at the Mediterranean countries. See Israel. Israel has a key port, a historic a port that goes back to times immemorial. That is the port of Haifa, to biblical times or pre-biblical times, right? Port of Haifa. Under Netanyahu, the Chinese bought an island on that port, not island as geographically an island, like a dock, like a part of the port. Chinese companies invested there and they acquired it. The Americans were very upset. Why were they upset? Because American 6th Fleet uses the port of Haifa. And they also park their nuclear submarines there. So they don't want the Chinese watching. So Americans protested. You know what a close ally Israel is to the Americans. Americans insisted, Trump insisted that Netanyahu allow American Coast Guard to inspect the port to make sure there was no surveillance. But Netanyahu did not allow it because he had already signed a very weighty treaty with the Chinese. So Chinese influence, the foothold in Israel had really grown. Just as the Chinese influence and foothold had grown in other parts of the Middle East, for example, UAE. China is the largest trading partner of the UAE. India is the second largest. So Chinese were getting in there. Saudi royal family, UAE royal family, members of the royal family were all signing up joint ventures with Chinese companies. Because in any case, all ventures in those countries have some element of royal family ownership. So a lot of that was happening, and the Americans were also getting worried that Chinese were now moving into their own backyard. Now, why is it important for America? America for a long time had a very heavy presence in the Middle East because they controlled the Middle East. It was simplistic to say it was only because of the oil, but that was also one reason. Now that equation has changed. So America still does not want to give up on the Middle East. It doesn't want to be there all the time in the strength that it was there earlier. It wants to lighten its burden. So it's not about to abandon or cut its losses and go away from the Middle East as they've gone from Afghanistan. Middle East is much too valuable for them. But they would rather that if more alliances are built up, including the including the Middle Eastern countries, especially countries which have been friends of America or which have lately become friends of America. So India has lately become a friend of America. Israel has always been a friend of America. UAE, Saudi Arabia, other Arab countries, they've generally been friends of America, also very friendly with the Chinese. So if these countries can come together and form one more pressure group, then they can ensure stability in this region in a way that suits the Americans, it serves the purpose for them, and it achieves that purpose without having a lot of American forces physically present here. Now, once again, you can look further away from the Middle East because, the world is shrinking. In front of Haifa, there is the Mediterranean. So what has now happened? With the Israelis and the UAE coming together, one Haifa is gone, in the sense that Israel, UAE are not adversaries anymore. So Israeli company, which is Israel Shipyards Industries, which is a very key part of the Israeli military industrial complex, and DP World, which is a Dubai company. They've together bought another part of the Haifa harbor. That part directly overlooks the part that the Chinese bought, right across the bay. Read Jyoti Malhotra's article because she makes a mention of that. And in the middle, Sixth Fleet can come and have its own fun. So there is balancing coming in, and this is what has changed the picture. The UAE and the Israelis, once again, read Jyoti's article, she reminds you that they are now building a pipeline. It's called the Med-Red pipeline. Med for Mediterranean, Red for Red Sea. What will this pipeline do? This will connect the Israeli port of Eilat on Red Sea with the city of Ashkel on the Mediterranean. So then Gulf oil can skip Suez Canal. So that one bottleneck also goes away. So this world is changing. And if you look further away, look at East Mediterranean, again, there are friends and there are enemies, and there are old enmities and there are old friendships. India, Cyprus, old friendship. Turkey, Greece, old enmity. No country in that region likes the idea of Erdogan bringing in some kind of Ottomanesque sphere of influence, except maybe Pakistan, right? So Greece has tensions there. The French have tensions because French have interest there. In fact, Turkey has got NATO divided on this. All along the East Mediterranean coast, a lot of gas has been found, natural gas. That now has value. So every country is getting interested. France is getting interested. China is getting interested. America is already getting interested. India should also get interested. And these new alliances, these new unhyphenated regions give India that opportunity. So I'm sharing with you some readings. One is Raja Mohan's article, but two articles by him. One, the article that appeared today. One, the article he wrote on August 3, because he pretty much set the agenda for what you might call today as the Middle Eastern Quad. Because in that article, he quoted an Egyptian scholar who works out of Washington, and his name is Muhammad Soliman. And Muhammad Soliman had then said, and I'm also sharing with you the link of a discussion where Muhammad Soliman has spoken, that now there should be an Indo-Abraham Accords in the Middle East. Just as there were Abraham Accords, and Abraham Accords, where the name comes from, that the Jews and the Muslims, they owe their origin to the same prophets. So that's why Abrahamic Accords. So do the Christians, in fact, and the Americans were the ones who made these accords possible. So there should be an Indo-Abrahamic Accord. So India would inveigle itself into these alliances. These two articles by Raja Mohan, one by my colleague Jyoti Malhotra, that's a must read, and also this link of this talk by Muhammad Soliman. So you have this curious situation now, whereas in Haifa port, Chinese own one part, the Israelis and the UAE own another part, and the rest is the place where even the American Sixth Fleet comes and does its stuff. That is how interesting that region has begun. Now the big issue with the region is that Americans do not want to be so extended in the Middle East as used to be the case in the past. They don't want so much military presence, so much physical presence. But it's not as if they are breaking away from the Middle East. They can't afford to treat the Middle East like they've done, say, with Afghanistan. So they want to go away. They don't want to keep the same presence there, but they don't want their interests to be not looked after there. And they now think that after Abraham Accords, they can set up a new system and they can help set up new alliances in this region. Those alliances will look after the same interests. So you may not say, nobody would like to say that this is against China, but in a way, it balances China's influence there. Otherwise, the Chinese were moving with every country there. UAE, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, Iran, everybody. And the Americans were getting left behind. Now, I will conclude this with the line spoken by Israeli foreign minister and alternate prime minister. They have alternate prime ministers. Yair Lapid. He opened this meeting of the foreign ministers saying this, and his exact words, quote, "Around this virtual table, there is a unique set of capabilities, knowledge and experience that can be used to create the network that we all want to see created." Now, if we look at the Israeli papers, Israeli commentary, they put it out in the sharpest possible way that what have these countries got? US has got its strategic influence and strategic power, right? And it's also its diplomatic ability to unite people. Israel has got its innovation. India has got the scale, right, with Israel lacks. Whereas UAE has the capital, which both Israel and India lack. So UAE capital, Indian scale, or if you so prefer, we can put India first. Indian scale, UAE capital, Israeli innovation, and American strategic power. So 4 of these things get together, they can do very interesting things. Whether or not we call it another quad going ahead is a different issue, but I think that quad is spelled with a capital Q. So they will only remain one quad.